Liberty in our lifetimes in a free state of our own. That's the vision. That's the dream. And we are building it in New Hampshire. I'm Eric Brakey, your host and renegade statesman for the Porcupine Report. Welcome to your source for porcupine news and free-range conversation on matters of liberty. All right, let's hop into the show. Hey there, all you porcupines, you. This is your host, your renegade statesman, your executive director of the New Hampshire Free State Project, Eric Brakey. Welcome to episode 83 of the Porcupine Report. I want to say, first of all, I hope that you enjoyed last week's episode, even though it was a rebroadcast. It was a rebroadcast of my recent conversation with Constance Spencer, who has been a past producer for PorcFest, is a active Free Stater here in New Hampshire, and is also an organizer for this weekend's Free State Fall Fest events. I hope you enjoyed that. And I also just want to say a quick personal note that Constance is, I believe she just had her second surgery. She's been recovering from and battling cancer. And we wish Constance very well. And I look forward to seeing her this weekend at Fall Fest. And if you would like to wish Constance well, then please come out to Fall Fest. We would love to see you there. I'll tell you more about that in a bit. There's going to be a lot to cover today, a few things to cover today before we get to our great, excellent guest I'm looking forward to introducing you to. I'm sure a lot of people have questions for me. You know, the reason I was out last week and we did a rebroadcast is that I did take a week off for a personal vacation, which ended somewhat eventfully, as some may be aware. I'll be talking about that, sharing just a little bit, because I know so many people have had so many questions for me about this and how I was detained by Border Patrol, and I would argue unconstitutionally and illegally. They read my personal journal, which I keep because, as you may know, I'm a libertarian stoic, and journaling is a very important practice for stoicism. They accessed my phone and my computer and rifled through all my belongings. I'll share a little bit about that in a bit. But before I do that, I want to say, you know, people ask me all the time, Eric, where do you find the energy to fight tyranny all the time? Well, it was a lot easier in my 20s when you just have a lot of natural energy. But now that I'm in my mid to late 30s, sometimes I need a little bit of a pick-me-up. And you know what? The best pick-me-up for me is Porcupine Coffee. Our friends at Porcupine Coffee Roasting are our wonderful sponsor for the show. I really appreciate them. I have a subscription with them. I get a nice, delicious bag of freshly ground coffee shipped to me every single month. It is always delicious. In fact, we say it's a revolution in your mug. It's proudly operated by Free Staters in the Free State, and they roast only specialty grade beans from small producers, always fresh, roasted in small batches to order with a roast date you can trust. They do not use stale beans. I promise you that. They are fresh beans. Porcupine Coffee is all about sovereignty. It's a private membership association that embodies the live for your die ethic, giving freedom-minded folks like you a way to choose liberty with every sip. It's crafted for the caffeinated and the freedom-loving, perfect for those living with that free state spirit, whether that's here in New Hampshire or anywhere, and you just want the taste of liberty from New Hampshire. They ship all around the country. So here's the deal. Use code PORKREPORT at porcupinecoffeeroasting.com and you will get 15% off your order of individual products, plus a portion of your purchase will go to help support this very program. I call that a win-win-win, a win for you. You're getting great, delicious coffee, a win for some local Free Staters that are making and roasting wonderful coffee, and a win for the show that you know and love, the Porcupine Report, because you're helping to support the show. So grab your fresh roasted coffee and support liberty one cup at a time. Head to porcupinecoffeeroasting.com and use Pork Report for that 15% off of your order of individual products. So live free, drink free, stay caffeinated, my friends. That's nice. All right. Other things I want to tell you about. I've been telling you all about it this weekend. That's Columbus Day weekend. We are having all along across the long 3-day week, the Free State Fall Fest. I like to say here in New Hampshire, it's the one state in New England you can get autumn without communism, freedom without fascism. That's how we do it here in New Hampshire. The beautiful fall foliage is in full swing, and we have a lot of great family-friendly events taking place all weekend long. Saturday, you can come out and join us for apple picking in the morning. I'm sorry, that's in the early afternoon, 1:30 at Max Apple in Londonderry. That evening, we will have axe throwing at the Rugged Axe for those who came out to the Porcupine Day celebration we had earlier this year. That was at the Rugged Axe. We all had a lot of fun. This is a very fun place. Even if you've never thrown an axe before, it's a lot of fun. Come out, socialize, and maybe you'll find you're a better axe thrower than you realize. I certainly did. I didn't always hit the mark, but you know what? It was a lot of fun. So that'll be Saturday. And then Sunday during Fall Fest, you've got choices between two really fun events. This one, now, if you are someone who enjoys arcades, and we, in fact, have in New Hampshire the world's largest arcade at Fun Spot. So that'll be for 4 hours, 12 p.m. noon to 4 p.m. in Laconia. And also that same day, now these are going on somewhat concurrently, so you have to choose. You can't choose wrong either way. We also have the Free State Bitcoin Digital Asset Conference taking place in Newcastle. And this is hosted by our friends Bruce and Carol Ann Fenton. I will be there. I will be speaking at the Free State Bitcoin conference. And I hope if you're into cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and blockchain technology, this is the event for you. This is an annual event, and it's going to be wonderful. It's at Wentworth by the Sea. It's going to be a beautiful venue, and I hope that you come out and join us. And then Monday, the final day of our 3-day weekend for Fall Fest, we have at 10:30 a.m. to noon a family hike. That's going to be in Auburn, New Hampshire. And that evening, a family film night. We're going to be watching A Bug's Life. So this is great for the kiddos. Rated G. Parents don't have to worry at all. But it's going to be a discussion afterwards about some of the freedom and liberty messages in the film. So those are the events for Fall Fest. I hope that you come out. And, there's so many fun family-friendly events that are a part of this. Great to bring the whole family. And if you're like a Bitcoin nerd and you like your wife and your kids maybe aren't into that, you can go to the Bitcoin conference. They can go to the arcade day, and you can join them for the other family-friendly events. So it's a great pairing. I hope you come out and experience Autumn Without Communism with us this weekend. And then we have another event coming up I want to make sure is on your radar for all our political activists or aspiring political activists who would like to be politically effective. We're going to be talking a little bit about this, among other things, with our guest today. But on Saturday, November 8th, we are hosting a Free State Political Leadership Workshop. And this is going to be taught by some of my friends with the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership. This is going to be in Concord, New Hampshire. And this is the political activism training that I used as I was first getting into political activism. I applied this when I was just an activist, first getting involved for the first time. I applied these tools while I was in the state legislature in Maine. This is how we pass constitutional carry in Maine, and these lessons can be applied to so many efforts if you want to hold the politicians accountable. And I like to say, make the wrong politicians do the right thing. As Morton Blackwell says, this is, we can try to get all the right people elected who will do the right thing because that's what's in their heart of hearts. That's a great thing to aspire to. It's not always practical. Even in the free state of New Hampshire, where we have over like nearly 100 liberty legislators elected, more than anywhere else in the country, there's still some other politicians who maybe don't have liberty in their heart. But if you know the skills and tactics to be politically effective, you can make it politically expedient for them to do the right thing. They could vote for liberty because they believe in getting reelected. And we'll give you the skills on how to do that. So come out and join us for that. And all of these events and more can be found at fsp.org. We have them right on the front page, easy for you to find. For Fall Fest, for the political leadership workshop, please come out and join us for those. And I also want to put a plug in. Every single week, I write with my team a very engaging, in-depth newsletter, our Free State Project newsletter. If you aren't receiving it, you are missing out. So sign up while you're at fsp.org, looking at all the great events that are coming up, whether that's on the front page, or check out the community calendar of all the events that are happening nearly every single day. Sign up for the newsletter so you're always informed with the fun news of things that are happening and things that are going to happen. Sign up for the newsletter. You don't want to miss out. And while you're there, well, we really appreciate our patrons. We have over 200 patrons. These are individuals who are donating at least $100 a year or $10 a month to support the year-round mission of the Free State Project as we work to promote, outreach, invite, welcome, and engage, getting folks from out in the Liberty diaspora to come and experience New Hampshire and sell themselves. I can't sell people on making the move, but when they come and visit, they realize this is where they need to be. We get people, so we are working always to get more liberty lovers to join us and become free staters here in New Hampshire. You can support our year-round mission by becoming a patron. And of course, there's tons of benefits, including our exclusive print quarterly patron newsletter, which I have to write. It's that time now. I need to get on writing that patron newsletter, as well as benefits at and perks at all of our events, and a nice, really awesome Porcupine patron pin. So learn more, fsp.org/give. All right, those are all the plugs I wanted to get in. Very briefly, I will tell you a little bit about, I'm not going to go too much in depth, but everyone is asking me, yes, as you may have seen on social media, when I was coming back into the country from this cruise I was on, I was detained for about an hour and a half. I was separated from my friends who I was traveling with. They said that my bag looked heavy, and that was the grounds to pull me into a back room, rifle through all my belongings, read my personal journal, demand my electronic devices, including my cell phone and my computer, and to access all those things. They questioned me about the Free State Project and why I had the word militia in my journal, because so I had to explain these things to them. The Free State Project, where we believe in peaceful community building and engaging peacefully in the political process. We're encouraging libertarians to come to New Hampshire because it is the most libertarian state, right? Low taxes. I mean, we've abolished a lot of the taxes, no income tax, no sales tax, and gun rights and school choice and all these things. Why was militia in my journal that they read very inappropriately? They shouldn't have been reading my personal journal without my consent, but they did. So, well, I had to explain to them what Defend the Guard is about, and the word militia was in my journal because the militia clause is the basis of the constitutional argument for Defend the Guard for state legislatures to bring their troops home from wars that have not been declared by Congress. It was eventually they let me go. They let me have my things back, but I will be honest. It was I felt very violated by the experience. And look, I'm not to say that some people have commented. First of all, I'll say since I posted this, a lot of people were very supportive and very outraged that this happened to me, and I really appreciate that. There are some people who said, well, what a big deal. Worse things have happened to people. And that's true. Worse things have happened to people. I'm not saying, woe is me. This is the worst thing that the government has ever done to anyone. I mean, after all, as we all know, there are free staters who are currently in federal jail, are currently serving in federal prison for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency so-called crimes. I certainly think that they've got it worse than I got. but it still was a very clear violation of, I think this entire policy of taking people's electronic devices without due process, without probable cause, without a warrant, is a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. In fact, multiple kind of liberty-oriented law firms have reached out to me offering to represent me pro bono if I want to sue them over this. They've been looking for cases to challenge this policy. I'm in talks with them. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. There's a lot of considerations I need to weigh there, but I just want to let you know what is going on there. And I will say, it was, again, I know that worse things have happened. Government does far worse things to people. I mean, right, our government right now is like, blowing up boats, in the ocean because because they say that they're smuggling drugs and they never have to prove it. They never have to, our government is responsible for murdering all kinds of people in wars that are waged without congressional approval all across the world. I'm not saying it's the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone, but it was pretty jarring for me. I felt a bit of shock coming out of it, and I'm still kind of processing it all. I appreciate all the support that people have given me. I will say it has been, to be expected. I know I'm in the political arena, or I have been in the political arena. It is a little frustrating, and frankly, it feels like sometimes it's making me kind of relive the trauma a little bit when I see, like, on the Daily Kos, the leftists are coming out and attacking me over this and saying, well, you voted for Donald Trump, so therefore you're got what's coming to you. And, I'm not going to get into all the nuances of that. I've always had my misgivings. I've had my misgivings about Trump. I have had I've been very outspoken in my criticisms of many of the policies that have been put in place since he became president, as well as outspoken when he's done things that I agree with. But I think we should understand that these policies have been this police state has been growing and escalating. I mean, since the Bush administration. This isn't a Republican Democrat thing. This isn't a Trump versus other presidents thing. I mean, Bush, Obama, Biden, and the Trump administration, they've all been complicit in this growing of this police state around us. And that reminds me, of course, what we are fighting and why the Free State Project is so important. And it resolves me further to be even more committed to the mission that we're building of building a free state where we have the positioning to be able to fight back against tyrannies like these. So I hope that if you don't like seeing the government do things like this, I hope that you find ways to fight back and fight for liberty in your own individual way. And one of the best ways is to simply come visit New Hampshire, come see the community that's being built here, and consider making the move and joining the most successful and most effective libertarian project going on in the world right now, which is the Free State Project. This is one way to fight back, and we can all be a part of it. So thank you. I'm sure this story is going to continue developing. I'm not sure what more I'm going to say, but I am talking with lawyers, and we'll see about that. So thank you to everyone who sent me positive, warm wishes. I appreciate it. All right. Boy, that's a longer intro than I usually do, but thank you for your patience. And thank you to the patience of our guest, who I'm looking forward to introducing you to. I'm really excited to have him on. This is the first time he's been on the show. I guess I'll tell you his name. His name is Pedro Serra, and Pedro is a business owner and business builder. He's built businesses in Puerto Rico. He recently made the move to New Hampshire. He's a new free stater, and he's been hitting the ground running as a really awesome and engaging new volunteer and organizer. In fact, I've been so impressed with his willingness to jump in and help out that he's currently serving as our outreach director. So he's helping to coordinate our outreach programs and coordinating our volunteers to do outreach to events around New England in particular, where we can meet more freedom lovers, let them know about the Free State Project, and invite them and we are inviting them to come out to our events. See, that's how it works. We outreach to the Liberty diaspora, we invite them to come and visit, and then we welcome them when they're ready to make the move. So I really appreciate Pedro is doing an excellent job in helping us with this. And one thing I really learned about Pedro that made me feel a certain kinship with him, he came to Pork Fest and I met him for the first time this year, and I found out Pedro has been in the Liberty movement for quite a while. In fact, at least as long as I've been. As you may know, I was the state director for the Ron Paul campaign in the Pine Tree State of Maine in 2012. I come to find out that Pedro was the state director of the Ron Paul campaign on the other coast in Washington State in 2012. So, I often, think in this movement, this decentralized movement for liberty, that there are people on a parallel way, and we don't always know what they're doing, but it's comforting to know that they're out there, that we're all kind of tunneling our way towards liberty the best that we can, finding projects to invest ourselves in to try to advance the cause. And Pedro, all this time, has been doing that, building businesses, and of course, serving as the state director for Ron Paul in 2012 in Washington State. We're going to be talking with him all about that, his decision to come to New Hampshire and be a part of the Free State Project, and ways that you can be involved with our outreach efforts. So let's welcome to the show, Pedro Serra.
Hello, thank you. I'm really happy to be on. I have to do a shout out for Chris Lopez for suggesting or recommending that I be on, but thank you, Eric, for actually inviting me to be on. So
Well, I'm glad to have you on. As folks know, in full honesty, I was coming back from the cruise. It was kind of it's going through this ordeal, and it's like I'm getting back late last night. I'm thinking I haven't lined up a guest yet. Like who could I get on at short notice? And Pedro not only is a great guest to have on, like someone I should have invited on sooner, frankly, to be honest. But Pedro stepped up last minute, and we're gonna have a great conversation. So Pedro, I'm really glad to introduce you to our audience.
Yeah. I think it's reprehensible what happened to you coming back into the country. You presented your passport, and nowhere in the Fourth Amendment is there a limitation for when you're traveling or coming back from vacation. So we are sorry you had to go through that. And to think some people spend days, sometimes in detention. This is something that we have to pick up in the liberty movement for sure.
Yeah. It's like I understand, and I understand all the debates around like immigration, and the libertarians can disagree on to what degree borders should be open or closed and what the processes should be. But certainly, not to champion my own cause, but since I put this out there, I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me, U.S. citizens who've had very similar experiences trying to come back into their own country, and having their papers and their electronic devices confiscated and searched with no probable cause whatsoever, no reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed. It's the kind of thing. I've been marginally kind of aware that this is going on, right? I remember reading I think 5 years ago, there was a story in Reason magazine about these kinds of activities that border control was doing. But it's I hate to say it, it's like it's kind of know these things are happening, and you kind of object to it on a philosophical level. But when you find yourself in the middle of it, it suddenly kind of it hits you on a whole different level. So I appreciate what you say, Pedro, and I appreciate all those who've shared their own stories with me.
Like you said, it's a reminder to why we're doing what we're doing. So
yeah, and I did have to assure them that we are a peaceful movement. we are not in fact forming a militia to overthrow and insurrect against the government. That was like literally the questions they were asking me. Are you affiliated with like the Oath Keepers or the Proud Boys or the Minutemen? I was just like, we're just trying to build community, and we're trying to peacefully engage in the political process. But
Right.
Anyway,
I
not to
think
not to
quite the opposite. I mean, I think my overarching message today is that the Free State Project is an incredibly important initiative and a really very exciting one. And I hope to make the case for that. And I would say that, it's been on my radar to move to New Hampshire for over 10 years. And I finally got here. And I have to say that had I known how special the community here is and how welcoming everyone has been, I would have made the move sooner. It's a breath of fresh air to be among your people, among other liberty lovers. And for those of you that have already moved here, so we have some exciting ways to get involved, and it's really fun to participate in outreach, I have found, and I really enjoy it.
And Pedro, I will say every week as I'm putting together the newsletter and I'm like putting up like photos from like the various events that are going on, you're a little bit like Where's Waldo? It's like every event, it's like, hey, here's the Rucking group this week, or here was this social hour, and it's like, there's Pedro, he's there, like like anyway. So you've really been, since you've made the move, Pedro, you've really been jumping into, seems like every you've been connecting with the Free State community every chance you have, and I really appreciate you not just getting involved in in joining the community, but becoming an active leader in helping to organize some of our efforts there. So I guess before we get into I would love to talk about some of the outreach events. I'd love to talk about the political leadership school that you are helping us organize, that's coming up in November. But before we get to all of that, I think people might appreciate knowing a little bit more of your story. How did you get involved in the Liberty movement? I understand that your experience as a business owner and business builder was a big part of that. You also were involved in the Ron Paul 2012 campaign. Where would you like to begin?
Sure. Well, I'm a businessman from Puerto Rico. There I was in the hospitality industry, and I was a real estate investor. So I had a few restaurants, I had a hostel, and I really enjoyed, that was about 20 years. I really enjoyed owning my own businesses, and, built businesses, but also built community. Many of my customers became friends, and staff also. Both staff and customers ended up coming over to my home oftentimes. So we had a lot of, for birthdays or special occasions. But I have to say that an overarching, sort of a shadow that was cast on me during all that time was that I felt like I had a part-time job with the government, especially opening a business felt like a full-time job, frankly. The permit process is unbelievable. See, a lot of people rag on the Department of Motor Vehicles because that's really their only experience with government agencies. If you're an employee, your employer withholds your taxes, and you file a return, relatively simple return at the end of the year, and you renew your license every 5-10 years, whatever it is. And that's the nightmare that is government. But when you own a business, you deal with so many different agencies. And so I had, you have the fire department permit and inspection, the health department permit inspection, the use permit. I was in a tourist area, so I had a tourism permit. I had a culture permit, whatever that is. And all these inspections, all these, filings, sales tax, room tax are monthly, and then you have your quarterly filings and your annual filings. You have annual filings with the State Department, with the tax department. It feels like it never ends, and you realize that in a large part, your biggest obstacle is the government itself. And here you are, you're feeling good about building a business, and you're a customer to your suppliers. You're a supplier to your customers. You're creating employment, and oftentimes looked at as the enemy. So that was that got to be annoying. And at some point, I decided I didn't want to do that anymore, and it wasn't exciting to me anymore to open up another restaurant or to buy a bigger business. I wanted to find a way to make a difference.
Yeah, well, Pedro, it does often seem like the level of kind of ignorance and economic ignorance that is out there. You certainly see that reflected in a lot of laws in a lot of states in terms of how we treat business owners, right? It's always like, I always think even just like corporate, like or business taxes, right? People think it's like, oh, all right, well, we're not going to raise taxes on people. We're going to raise taxes on businesses,
Right.
as if
Right.
like the businesses don't have to raise their prices to compensate for that, or pay their people less to compensate for that. Like the money's got to come from somewhere, and it's it is. It just feels like always just like killing killing the goose that laid the golden egg. The way we treat business owners so often, and it always has seemed to me that I dealt with this a bit in the Maine Senate, right? People, it seems like whenever politicians want to come up with ideas like we're going to create jobs and we're going to support business, it's never like we're going to cut taxes on all businesses. We're gonna cut unnecessary regulations on all businesses. It's always like some corporate welfare scheme, like,
That's
hey,
right.
we're gonna take taxpayer money and we are going to redistribute it to the politically connected businesses that the politicians choose. And it's like, anyway,
Yeah,
why
I would
why can't we
often
just
say that they'd announced some new incentive. When I had a hostel, and were relatively new to Puerto Rico. So now the tourism company was going to get involved, and everything was perfectly fine. And now they came out with this new book of regulations, and we're going to help promote you. I really didn't want any help. I just wanted them to stay out of the way and not get involved. So it's not that I felt defeated by the government by any means. I just, I always think I had it in my mind that there would be sort of part one and part two to my life. One
yeah,
was sort of, I call, putting on your own mask so that you can then better help put on someone else's mask. And so I really set out to see what I could do to make a difference, what I thought was important. I wanted to dedicate myself to something important. And this is where perhaps my view of the Free State Project is slightly different. You see, aside from Puerto Rico, I've lived in the Dominican Republic, I've lived in Colombia. Spanish is my first language, and you see real poverty. You have, this last year I decided to try and get involved with a project there, and I took some time, I took some money, and I visited some communities that are unreal.
yeah,
People living in tin homes with a dirt floor and holes in the roof, where if it rains, their bed gets wet and the
yeah.
floor is wet, and no doors or windows, mosquitoes. I mean, it's a nightmare. They really, and here I am trying to help, trying to think about what I can do to help, distributing food, and you immediately realize it's a drop in the bucket. There's it's they eat dinner that night, and then tomorrow what?
Right.
And I was just reminded how it's not that the Dominican Republic or Colombia or Venezuela are inherently poor. It's not that they're lazy. It's that they don't have economic freedom. They don't enjoy the economic freedom. And I lived this being in Puerto Rico. I mean, Puerto Rico, sometimes is looked at as a state and sometimes looked as its own country, depending on who's measuring or who's deciding. And
Mhm.
so internationally, Puerto Rico as a country enjoys a high standard of living, the highest in Latin America. But as a state, compared to the other U.S. states, it's the poorest. It's
Mhm.
significantly poorer than Mississippi, which is last. And so you're reminded that if you care about poverty, and really if you care about any of the important issues, education, quality of life, healthcare, longevity, economic freedom is what matters most. For a time, I would I really enjoyed studying the Cato Institute's Human Freedom Index, or the Heritage Foundation Economic Freedom Index. And we know that economic freedom matters most because if you scatter plot every country in the world and you compare it to the United Nations Human Development Index, which looks at precisely all these things that we all care about, like education, healthcare, and average income, there's a direct correlation. The freest countries like New Zealand, Singapore, Switzerland, the Scandinavian countries, US, etc., all enjoy the highest standard of living, and the lowest ranking countries like Venezuela or North Korea or Cuba have the worst services and the worst infrastructure and everything in between. And so the Dominican Republic is moderately free. That's how it ranks, and has moderate quality of life.
Yeah. I remember when I was much younger, I was leaving middle school and going into high school. I was on a church mission trip, and we went down to Juarez, Mexico, to build houses down there. And that was a very eye-opening experience for me to see, a type of poverty you just don't see in the U.S. I mean, outside of like maybe certain like, you go to, the open air drug den tent cities and stuff like that. Of course, that's not the reason for the poverty kind of in Juarez, but it was like amazing to see, people building fences out of tires, and there's just desperation. And what's amazing to see is like in Juarez, Mexico, like you can look and you can see right across that border. You can see the skyscrapers. Like you can see it's just like night and day. And we can have all kinds of talks about what are the particular circumstances there, but it's I remember thinking at the time, it's like, man, it costs so much money to send all us kids down here to come build houses, and we built 2 houses, and I don't know, what if we sent the money down there to help people build houses for themselves? But I realized actually, it was actually about giving us perspective to understand, like,
right.
That the little suburban bubble we grew up in is not the normal thing in the world. And of course, as I grew older, beginning to understand, like, the most important thing is like property rights and people having the ability to plan and invest and build, and to understand that their property is going to be protected and not just arbitrarily confiscated by either the state or by other people who could just come and vandalize and steal what you have.
Right.
And of course, that's I think that's been that kind of cornerstone of economic freedom, as certainly Murray Rothbard consider property rights to be the fundamental economic freedom. Like that is and not just economic freedom, fundamental all freedom.
Right.
That's been what's made the difference. As imperfectly as it's been implemented here in the U.S., it still is fairly rare in so many other countries. And it sounds like you've seen what that's like.
Definitely. And so I really did approach this from sort of a first principles point of view, where I asked myself, well, what makes the biggest difference in the world? And once you conclude it's economic freedom, then the second question is what helps spread it the most? And I think there's a solid argument that leading by example, the U.S., I mean, the U.K., you look at the U.K., the 1800s, vast amounts of poverty. The vast majority of people were poor and lived below the poverty line. And today it's nearly eradicated. And they set an example for other countries. And well over a century, the U.S. has led by example, with many countries have wanted to emulate the U.S. Here you hear differing perspectives about whether the U.S. is a good country or not, and of course it's imperfect. I think libertarians are the first to point that out.
We're very quick to point out all the ways that our government is imperfect, but it is worth keeping it in context with the rest of the world.
That's right. Anyone who's overly critical of our system or of capitalism simply hasn't lived somewhere else. I mean, people are tripping over themselves to try to come to the US. The US accepts more immigrants than every other country combined. And it's amazing to me how capitalism has become this dirty word. It's what's raised so many people out of poverty. And if it's true that the US has sort of begun losing its way, I think the idea behind the Free State Project is genius. We're going to lead by example. New Hampshire is already the freest state, and now we're going to work on making it significantly freer than every other state, the state that every other state will want to emulate. And people will not just continue moving here, they'll eventually start copying what we're doing. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm glad you hit on that, because I do think that is such an important point on the value of the Free State Project, right? We are building a free society for ourselves and for future generations. Absolutely. That's what we are aiming to do in New Hampshire. But it is, I believe, very much, some people criticize libertarian universalism, and I criticize it in the sense that, I think it's impractical to think we're going to set the world free in our lifetimes. Like, I think that was like the slogan for the Libertarian Party at one point. And it just seems like, can we just focus on, let's focus on a little sliver of the world and start there. But there is power to that, right? That idea that the founding generation had originally of America being, right, the shining city on a hill, right? We build something here that can serve as an example for the world. And sadly, where so much of our American experiment went wrong is when we started to think that rather than being an example to the world, we could spread freedom at the barrel of a gun around
by force. Exactly.
Right? And of course, you can't spread freedom like at the barrel of a gun. It's a contradiction. And of course, as John Quincy Adams predicted, we could become the dictatress of the world, but we would no longer be the ruler of our own spirit. And that's what has become. We have tried to spread freedom, or of course, that's what the politicians, the neoconservatives, told us we were doing at the barrel of a gun. And in the process, we lost all of our freedoms here at home. We're losing our economic freedoms. We're losing our personal freedoms. We are erecting a surveillance police state up around us. And if this is the direction that America in general is going, whether it's the right wing or the left wing of the kind of the machine in power in Washington, D.C., maybe we can't save the whole country right now, but we can create a safe haven and an example for the rest of the country and for the world. And I think it's a radical thing that we're doing. And it's something that I thought a lot about after this weekend, being grilled and detained and all of that. Is someone pointed out online, like, I don't get why they would do this. Like, you guys, the Free State movement, this is a very peaceful movement. And it's like, well, that's it, right? It is the peaceful resistance that is the most dangerous resistance, right? As we saw on like January 6th, like when you get violent, that's when they can turn the whole machine against you and paint you and discredit you. But our peaceful, we have a peaceful strategy that is an effective strategy, and that is in fact the most dangerous, by just showing that there is a different way and building it so that others can see.
I think we're really onto something, and exporting federalism as well, as we continue to sort of move towards greater and greater independence from the federal government. And I know you talk about passing laws that can nullify some of their overreach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm here. That's why I'm all in. And that's why I'm working as so hard as the outreach director. So I thought we could talk about some of that.
Yeah, well, let's hop into it, because Pedro, this is one of the most exciting developments with the Free State Project that has been going on the last couple of months. And right, it is this outreach program that I really appreciate you've stepped up to help organize. We can only do so much by just like going on social media and telling people, hey, we exist, good things are happening here, go to our website and come to visit, right? There are so many people who are never going to discover us that way, who have a real need for what we're building in New Hampshire. So, I mean, I could preach about it, but Pedro, how about you tell the folks about the outreach program?
Yes. Well, what Eric and I talked about is reaching out to, we've been focusing our effort on reaching out to folks that are liberty minded and live nearby in New England, in Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. These are the states that we've been visiting recently. And we'll go out to events that give us an opportunity to put up a table. They can be gun shows, they can be state fairs, any type of event really where we can talk to people about what we're doing. It's a lot of fun, and we need volunteers. So we're trying to really ramp up this program. We have a goal of doing one a week. So in a year, 52, and the bottleneck is having enough volunteers. So for those of you that are here, or for those of you that live in our neighboring states, please reach out to me. My email is pedro@fsp.org, and we can get you the materials. We have a simple little training manual. It's easy, it's fun, and it's great talking to people about what we're doing.
And I know I've personally tabled at several of these outreach events. Particularly, I've enjoyed the opportunity to go back home to, New Hampshire's my home now, but I still consider Maine to be my other home. It's not been in a good sort lately, but it's been nice to go to the gun shows there. We've connected with hundreds of people who are increasingly dispirited about the direction of Maine or whatever state we've been in. I mean, frankly, in New England, it's easy pickings because New Hampshire is the only game in town when it comes to freedom. Maine, of course, I thought, and I, my ancestors are buried there, but it's anyway, it's not been in a good spot. And there's a lot of people who are curious and want to at least come out to events and visit and see what we're building. Maybe some of them will make the move one day. But I think it's an important point that you make, right? We need volunteers from here in New Hampshire who would be willing to be an outreach volunteer and come out and table at these events. But we also need people in those states who maybe know an event or are willing to host an event and could invite Liberty friends that they know in their networks to come out and meet with us. We will come to you. In fact, I know I'm talking to a friend in Massachusetts who, we're talking about maybe doing an event in Massachusetts in December if we can get that organized. We'll see about that. So we are certainly looking for folks not just in New Hampshire but outside New Hampshire to help us with these outreach.
We have someone who came out to the trek, to the Granite State Freedom Trek last month, and he's going to be tabling a gun show in New York for us. So it's exciting. And, I'm just so thankful to all the early movers and all the people that have been moved here before me to grow this community. And it's amazing what you've all accomplished. And it's our turn as we move here to pay our dues and contribute to the Free State Project.
Yeah, it's a really amazing kind of foundation that's been laid. I'm grateful. I've only been here it's been almost 2 years since I joined the FSP, and it really does feel like standing on the shoulders of giants of a lot of people who, when it was much harder, when there weren't a lot of Free Staters, when the community was, Chris Lopez, for example, was mover number 50, and she says back in those days, like, people would drive all across the state just to get together for like one event. And these days we have it so easy. There's like Free State events happening like every day in every region of the state.
Right.
It's you don't need to drive so far to connect with other people who are here in this with you. And of course, we have so many native liberty loving Granite Staters who are part of our community as well. And we're grateful to them too.
When I do the outreach, I love telling people how we are winning in New Hampshire. I mean, I think people don't realize that. Oftentimes people don't even know that New Hampshire is the freest state, right? I mean, those of us that are so passionate about liberty, we know these statistics and we keep track of these things, but normal people don't. And people in New Hampshire just know that they love living here. They know that they love not paying taxes. They know that they used to pay dividend income tax, and as of the last couple of years, they haven't had to. That's nice.
Yeah.
They know that they used to pay interest income tax, and now they don't have to. That's nice. They know that they had to get their car inspected every year and get harassed about, whether it was, the stories I've been told is that whatever the inspection center does, whether it's fix brakes or fix rust, that's what they would fail you for, so that you suddenly had to spend more money.
Yeah.
And now you don't have to get your car inspected anymore. So we're winning. We have the most libertarian legislative body in the world, as you've pointed out on this podcast before. And we have the Republicans are a majority. The Liberty Caucus is huge. We have over 80 Liberty state representatives. We have some state senators. We're winning. It's an exciting time to be here. People should definitely plan their visit, which actually brings me to my next point.
Yeah, well, I will say real briefly before you get to the next point, how important that aspect is, because I think people sometimes underestimate when we say, New Hampshire's the freest state in America. They all look at us skeptical. It's like, well, you have, this bad U.S. senator, that bad congressman, or your governor's like, not a, she's a Republican and she's good on some things, but she's certainly not someone I point to as like a Rand Paul or a Thomas Massey type.
Sure.
So like, how could you claim that? It's like, but what they don't see is that, unlike, we had Scott Scheller on the program talking about Argentina the other day, right? What they don't see is that, well, it's great that Argentina has like a Javier Milei figure. The thing is, if Javier Milei is ever gone, then that revolution dies, right? If it's just built around one person and one executive, well, what happens when election changeover and that executive is gone? Or people talk about Florida, and DeSantis is certainly his mixed bag. Things that he was great on COVID. The other things I disagree with him on, but certainly there's been a lot of improvements in Florida on a lot of things. But the moment he's gone, what happens to Florida? Is that momentum towards economic freedom going to continue? But in New Hampshire, it's from the bottom up. It's from the legislature, which means it almost doesn't matter as much to a degree who the governor is. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the Liberty policies that are put on her desk, she reluctantly signs, but she signs them. and it's because we have a robust Liberty legislature that puts them there. And that's why this freedom revolution in New Hampshire is sustainable, is going to continue to grow. It's because it's in the legislature, and one day there will be a Liberty governor. One day there will be Liberty U.S. senators. Those are the fruits of the tree that will come down the road. But what's important right now is like we're building in the most important institution from the bottom up, which is in the lawmaking branch of the state government.
Well, that transitions perfectly, because both an opportunity to visit us and an opportunity for all of us that live here to get better at facing opposition, whether it's in the Senate or the governor, is the training seminar, political leadership training, that will be held on Saturday, November 8th. And so this weekend we have Fall Fest. We're encouraging our neighbors or people interested in the Free State Project to visit this weekend. But if you can't this weekend, or you have your eyes set a little further down the line, or
if you do come out this weekend and you fall so much in love that you're like, I got to come back again,
That's right.
and learn some good lessons. Anyway, go on.
Right. Come the weekend of the 7th, 8th, and 9th of November. So we're looking on Friday the 7th to offer our guests and locals alike a tour of the State House. And then we'll have dinner, the State House in Concord, of course, and we'll have dinner right on Main Street. And then the next day is our training seminar hosted by the foundation, or hosted by us, but conducted by the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership. They spun off of, you told me they spun off of the Ron Paul campaign.
Yeah. Or they're involved in that network. I think they may have preceded it. And I know, I will say to some of my Free State Libertarian friends, I know some people like, they hear that C word, conservative, and they're like, oh, what is this? It's, this is like Ron Paul Network, folks, right? So, and this is the group that's kind of tied in with friends at like the National Association for Gun Rights and National Right to Work Committee and other groups, and it's some of the highest quality training. Like, this teaches you the real nature of politics. This is not the kind of stuff that like you just grab a politician and say, well, tell me how it works. And they give you a Schoolhouse Rock version of how a bill becomes a law, right? No, this is actually understanding the actual mechanics. And one of the first principles is if a member of the political class tells you how something works, you need to ask yourself first and foremost, how do they benefit if I believe them, right? There is a skepticism of the political class built into this, as it should be. You should not trust politicians. And we have, we have some good ones here. We always need to, speaking as a recovering politician, you always want to, you try to make sure our good people don't fall to the dark side. The temptations of power are omnipresent in those roles. But so this is great training. It is how how to actually be politically effective, not just how to serve, the Republican establishment or a party establishment. It's not about that at all. It's about how you can make the party and political system work for you.
Perfect. And I also want to note that I think it'll be valuable for people of all levels of experience. We have some state representatives signed up, but there will also be activists who like to do behind the scenes work. They don't want to be out front. And we also have people that have never done anything before. And I think it'll be a good for them. It'll be a good way to see what's involved. And oftentimes we're interested in something, but we hesitate. And if we have the opportunity to learn a little more about it, then we'll feel more comfortable with taking some next steps. So regardless of your level of experience, please consider joining us. Go to fsp.org/FACL, FACL, to get your tickets. And early bird pricing ends in a few days. So it's actually really important you go right now. fsp.org/FACL. Regular price, by the way, is $60. Right now they're $45. And that includes your breakfast, your lunch, coffee, snacks, drinks. I mean, I think with the food alone, it's a wash, but the knowledge will be very valuable and useful to us all.
And a great instructor, I will say too. I've worked with her over the years. She actually, I mean, just so people understand her liberty bona fide, she was involved in the Ron Paul movement in 2012. She actually got herself elected as the Republican National Committee woman from Massachusetts back in the day, and was a real liberty voice there when we had a few in the RNC trying to hold the Reince Priebus crowd accountable. Since then, actually, the numbers have grown a little bit, which is nice to see as the party has been moving away from the neoconservatives and liberty lovers we've been working our way in. And I will say she personally, I worked with her on I think it was my congressional campaign. She helped do some of my fundraising, letter writing. Anyway, great proven activist. She is giving back now and teaching other people how to be effective activists. I'm really glad we can welcome her to New Hampshire, and maybe even she will realize how fertile the ground is for liberty in New Hampshire, and maybe even she will start to think about making her home here. You never know. So I encourage everyone to sign up, come out, learn how to be politically effective. Even if you already think you know it all, I guarantee you do not. I don't even know it all, and I've taken this training like 20 times, and I always learn something new, or I learn a way to apply the lessons even deeper. So this is for everyone, all skill levels. It is like an introductory one-day class, but whatever your skill level, it is right for you, assuming you want to be politically effective. If you want to be one of the whiners on the sidelines complaining about how we can never win, nothing will ever change. Well, then maybe
Yes.
that isn't the class for you, because this will dispel you of that notion very quickly.
So true. I took a training with the Leadership Institute, which is similar. And I definitely recommend these trainings. They're very, very good. They're people who are professionals. They've done this before many times, and they teach us the tools of the trade.
Absolutely. Pedro, before we go, I do want to ask you, we've talked about your background in business. We've talked about you moving to the Free State. We've talked about the training coming up, which again, people should get their tickets. But I do want to ask you, as we wrap up here, you did serve on the Ron Paul campaign in 2012.
Oh yeah, of course.
In Washington State. We don't have a lot of time, but I was wondering if you had any fond memories of that that you'd like to share with folks.
Well, I had my restaurants then. So I learned of Dr. Paul's message after the 2008 campaign, when I asked a friend whether he voted for, who he voted for, and he said Ron Paul. I'd never heard of him. So I had 2 restaurants, a bar, and the real estate rentals. But I became so passionate about this that the way I got into it was I volunteered for the Iowa straw poll. They were having a big push at the very beginning of the campaign, all boots on the ground in Iowa. And it was so invigorating to be around so many libertarians. See, that's something that people, that if you haven't worked on a campaign like this, or you live elsewhere in the state and you're a liberty lover, but you're frustrated because everyone else around you talks about how we need more laws, or we need more government, or it's just, you pull your hair out. And in Iowa was when I first got a taste of being around like-minded people. And and then after that, after volunteering there for a month or two, is when they asked me to stay on as the Washington State Director, which was a privilege. But once you get a taste of being around your people, you'll never want to live anywhere else. So again, that's why I've found living here in New Hampshire so special. And it's not just activism. We have hiking groups, there are yoga groups, there are weight training groups, there are book clubs, there are, you name an interest or a hobby, or there are liberty lovers doing it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's worth noting that in the Washington State caucuses, Dr. Paul got about 25% of the vote. Very, very strong second place. Sadly, we never seemed to get first place in any state. In Maine, there were some shenanigans, I think, that prevented that. But it is really nice, Pedro. There are, as I say, there are people on a parallel way. I'd never met you before. But I knew that, in 2012, there were all these people who were activated by Dr. Paul to carry the torch, and we've all tried to carry it in our own different ways. And it's really nice that you've brought your torch to New Hampshire. And I want to share that message with anyone out there, because I know that there are so many who were active and involved in those days when, particularly in the 2012 Ron Paul campaign, which was really, I think, a high watermark for the liberty movement in this country. And perhaps you, like me, or like Pedro, you've been carrying your torch in your own way wherever you are in the country. But this is the convergence, New Hampshire. Like, this is where all these liberty warriors, this is where we're planting our flag. This is where we are building the Free State. And you owe it to yourself. If you haven't been out to visit, if you haven't connected with the community here, you owe it to yourself to come out and visit. It really is. I remember when I first came on as executive director, and I came over here and I came to all these events, and I was just like, my goodness, like, this is the land that the end of the Ron Paul campaign forgot. Like, the liberty movement just kept building after 2012, where, as in so many other states, you start to see those torches flicker out as time goes on, as people get dispirited. They're beating their head against the wall. They don't have the results to demonstrate for all the work they've been putting into it. And to those who might be listening, if that describes you, if you are one of those liberty warriors, like, this is your Valhalla, it's time to come home. It's time to come to New Hampshire. at least come for a visit and see what you're missing out on.
Awesome.
Pedro, I'll give you the last word, and then we'll wrap up.
I'll just give the links again, so it's fresh on everyone's mind. If you'd like to come out for the FACL training, please go to fsp.org/FACL, FACL. If you'd like to volunteer to do some outreach, please send me an email at Pedro, Pedro, @fsp.org. And you can also connect with me on Twitter at Serra, SERRA, Pedro, Pedro, at Serra Pedro. And it'd be my pleasure to help you plan your visit.
Awesome, Pedro. Thank you for joining us all in the Free State Movement. It's really an honor to have you and to fight alongside you. And of course, we'll say to everyone, for at least all the events, you can find all of that on the front page of fsp.org. And we are in the process of launching a new website, which tentatively we're planning to have up and going later this month. And so when that happens, there'll be even more convenient, like volunteer sign-up forms that'll make it even easier to let us know that you'd like to be a volunteer. So watch for that. I'll keep folks posted there. Pedro, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
All right, everyone, that's the show. Again, check out my friends at Porcupine Coffee Roasting. Use code Pork Report for 15% off your individual orders. PorcupineCoffeeRoasting.com. Please come out to Fall Fest and the Free State Bitcoin Digital Asset Conference. Come out to our Political Leadership School in November. Sign up for the newsletter. Become a patron, and all the things. All the things. There's so many actions you can take to support the Free State Movement. And you just need to take a single step. If that single step is you go to the website today and you sign up for the newsletter, then that is enough for today. Take that single step. If you're ready for a bigger step, well, then take a few steps and come join us for an event. And if you're ready for more, if you're ready to move, then be in touch. Let us know. And we have so many pals. We call them our Porcupine Assistant Liaisons, pals, who are ready to connect you with to help you through the process of planning, preparing, and making your move. That's what we're here for. We're building the Free State, one new mover at a time. So thank you for listening or watching. Please like, share, subscribe, whatever makes sense for the platform that you're on. Thank you to our producer, Renita, for making us look so good. And furthermore, my opinion is the Federal Reserve should be destroyed.